Hola, good morning, Dumelang, and welcome to this week's episode of IAB Insight Series. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Tsogofatso Phehle, Creative Director at VML Johannesburg and IAB Youth Council member. And this episode was specially brought to you by our sponsor, Jellyfish, and our partners, DSTV Media Sales, Gumtree, Everlytic, and Biz Community. This morning, we will be talking all things paid digital media, including search, display, and social, with an overview of the IAB SA and PwC online ad spend report and the IAB SA and Narrative Digital Landscape Survey. Our speakers, Mario Swanepoel, Media Strategy Director at Jellyfish, Claudel Naidu, MD at Mediacom, and Eleanor Jensen, who is Director of PwC South Africa, Greg Mason from Narrative South Africa, who's stepping in for Kanyisa Melwa, who is unfortunately not well, but we wish him a speedy recovery. And last but not least, we have Mark Pryor, who is Digital and Video on Demand Ad Delivery and Strategy Director from DSTV Media Sales. Thank you for joining us as you highlight insights and opportunities for everyone on the call to actually take notes on. Now, before we get into it, there will be some keys before we get into the key tools, case studies, and resources that you need to maximize your marketing spend through digital, some house rules. After all our speakers have actually given us everything that they prepared for us today, do know that there will be a Q&A section, so do include your questions down below and we will answer them during that time. And as usual, share what you're learning with us using the hashtag IAB Insights and tag us at IABSA on Twitter. A feedback survey will also be shared at the end of the show just to gauge y'all's feelings on the webinar, so do fill it out when you get a chance. Great. So let's get going. I want to welcome our keynote speaker, Mario Swanepoel. Marius is currently Media Strategy Director at Jellyfish and has 12 plus years experience in planning and running campaigns in the American, European, Asian, and South African markets across many verticals, from automotive to education and finance. This has provided him with a breadth of cross-market, cross-platform, and cross-vertical knowledge and given him the insights and ability to adapt to both market, business, and budget-related needs to achieve business goals. Marius, hello, and how are you?
Hello, Tejo. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm doing well.
Good, good. Great to have you. Take it away.
So today I'm going to be speaking about what we at Jellyfish call platform thinking. Which is very much where we're seeing the kind of future of marketing is going to be taking us. Before I get there, though, I'm just going to kind of quickly jump into where we've come from and the kind of the changes that has led us to kind of this new kind of normal situation we're going to be looking at. So looking at the current marketing world. So the term digital marketing was first coined in 1990 with Google AdWords launching in 2000. Subsequently, since then, we've had multitudes of channels, tactics, targeting abilities, and also AI come into play to allow us to better target and hone in on our audiences, push the conversions, push the sales, and in the end, drive revenue for our brands and businesses. Throughout all this period, obviously, we've all, as marketers, had one key moment or a couple key moments at least where a specific tactic or a new format came out that really helped drive performance and really stands out in your mind. For me specifically, that was for Mercedes-Benz when I was running it. The Facebook carousel ad format had just come out, and within one day, we managed to put the new formats out there, get it approved by client, and get it running into an internet space for it. And the ability to showcase the car in more different assets to our audiences, alongside the targeting we had implemented at that point, allowed us for the first time in forever to have our social CPLs be online with what we saw on search for it. But if we look at where we kind of come from a push media targeting perspective, it was very much a broad targeting situation where we connected with the publisher knew its audience, we made a direct deal with it, and that's kind of where the targeting started for us in the good old days. Subsequently, since then, things have gotten a lot more complex. We have hundreds of data points on an individual user. We know exactly what they like, what they don't like, what they're looking to buy, if they're moving, if they've had a new child. There are so many different data points on each individual person out there that us as marketers can access, that it's almost gone from convenient to creepy to a large kind of extent for what we can kind of set our targeting to be and our campaigns to focus on. So with all of this, we've obviously had the ability to really hone in on the main target audiences that we're trying to reach and trying to push our products on to kind of help us get the leads, help us get the sales on a month-to-month basis. This combined with analytics itself getting more complex, with allowing us to target everything, whether you're utilizing it or not, you're tracking it, you're targeting it, so that you, at the end of the day, can optimize better, so that we can look at what it is, the levers we can pull to help increase our conversion rates, to help bring down our cost per leads. But as with many things, we have become overly focused on the performance aspects of this. We've become very, very focused on the month-to-month lead targets, the month-to-month numbers, so much so that we've kind of lost perspective that those numbers are not actually the end goal of what we're trying to achieve. The numbers reflect real people, real behaviors, and real needs for people that we're actively trying to service and make their lives better for, to some extent or another. Theodore Levitt coined the term marketing myopia, which is a very, very interesting concept and a very good read if you haven't actually read it before, which was published in the Harvard Business School. But essentially what it comes down to is a very short-sighted approach to marketing with a focus on selling products rather than fulfilling customer needs. So we have become very, very focused on selling our products at this point and getting those numbers one. And South Africa is specifically very, very guilty of this, because we tend to have lower budgets than the rest of the world, but the same high kind of targets to kind of achieve at the end of the day. So with all of our optimizations, with all of our focal points for it, we have really started pushing the boundaries in terms of how we can reach our target audience in the most efficient and effective ways for us. Our audience, on the other hand, has not seen it the same way. The coming changes to cookies and IDFA that's already made changes now is drastically going to affect how audiences are built in the future and how we can measure our successes in the future. Because inherently what it comes down to is the fact that the regulatory changes and browser updates, everything is centered around people wanting to get control of their data back. They want to choose who they share information with. They want to choose how they get remarketed rather than just automatic opt-ins for going to websites. So all of those things means that we're going to have to change our approaches as marketers quite drastically to really enable us to push the envelope and keep hitting the benchmarks and hitting the KPIs that we have set for ourselves. Because the things to keep in mind as we're kind of looking at this is, with cookies going away, audience collection is going to change, both from Google, Facebook, and all the big player sides, as well as how we can do retargeting, as well as the third-party players as well need to relook and rethink of how they're going to be capturing information and audiences to enable their businesses and to enable us as marketers to utilize that information in the long run. A lot of our measurement and as well as the audience creation is going to rely more and more heavily on modeling. So we're not going to see the actual numbers like we're used to seeing it now. It's going to be much more about this is what it should be or could be, depending on all the information that can be gathered from the website kind of traffic that's happening there, as well as all of the current audiences from Google and stuff like that, almost having a lookalike kind of perspective built into it organically, because some people are not going to allow tracking to happen to them. Some people are not going to allow you to measure every single movement they're doing with their mouse on their site anymore. And we need to keep that in mind, because it's heavily going to impact KPIs, benchmarks, and objectives we need to be setting in the future. All of this also being said, we need to understand that this is still very, very new at the end of the day. We do not know where all the cards are going to land when all of this is done. Everything is still changing. All the big players are still working on the ecosystems to make sure that we have as much of our tracking in place and with not broken as much as possible, as well as that Google and Facebook and all those players can do their targeting to as much efficiency as they are doing it now. But without us actually getting to that point at this stage, it's very hard to kind of have that vision for what that's going to be in place. And that all sounds a bit like gloom and doom at the end of the day. But the main thing we need to keep in mind is it's actually an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to relook and reset our approach to many things. So what our success metrics are like, what data is important to capture and what data is important for us to utilize. How do we look at brand versus performance marketing? And how do we actually approach targeting for channels and actual people in the background? In essence, it allows us to focus back down on fundamentals of marketing. keeping in mind that people don't want the quarter-inch drill. They want the quarter-inch hole. And even above that, the hole is not the end state either. It's about getting the extra shelving space. It's about hanging the picture of a loved one or a memory. And us as brands need to keep that in mind and focus on how we can help facilitate the kind of need spaces for those kind of things and how we can be there for our clients holistically for all of this. And inherently at Jellyfish, we have moved over towards, like I said, platform thinking. The platforms themselves have evolved tremendously over time. As people's expectations and needs have changed, the platforms have also evolved a lot, allowing us to do a lot more with it than what is currently kind of being utilized. From a paid media perspective, we're utilizing the funnel, but we're not putting enough focus and effort into really what the user is on the platform for and how we can best facilitate our creative, our audience insights and all those kind of things to really be there for the person in the right moment and the right kind of time. So when I say that things have become a lot more complex and changed in the platforms, if we look at search, for instance, previously when we say search meant Google. It meant Google ads, it meant SEO, get those things up and running and you're golden, you're set. But this day and age, it's actually changed quite a lot because all the social platforms have search functions in it. And there's different need states that drives the searches between those sections. So on Google, people are looking for solutions. They're looking to buy the drill. On YouTube, they're looking for guidance for the most part, like how to use the drill. And on Pinterest and Instagram, they're looking for inspiration. Neither the drill nor the hole are essentials in their life at this point yet. And all of this gives us as brands and marketers the ability to speak to our client base and be there for them in much more meaningful ways that can impact the long-term revenue and benefits for us in a much better way. So Jenny, what we are calling this is channel versus platform thinking. So in traditional kind of channel thinking, we're looking at what is our best performing search campaign and what's a CPC target that we need to get to drive people to the website efficiently and effectively as much as possible. Whereas what the new thinking needs to be is what are the different search behaviors on Google, Instagram, and Amazon? What is our brand opportunity? What is the desired audience experience that we kind of want to drive in those kind of things? So inherently what it comes down to is a merger between performance marketing and brand marketing. For too long in our kind of spheres, we've separated out those two things completely. Like we've had, in some cases, we have different teams working on performance versus brand. In some brands, we have different agencies working between those kind of things. And inherently, it needs to be a unified approach because as the individuals that we are actually trying to market to do not see performance versus brand. They see your brand. They see the one brand putting out different messages, different kind of creative out there into the ecosystem. And inherently, we need to think and plan this together strategically to really help us achieve a more holistic approach to marketing and also allow us to use the platforms in better, smarter ways than just putting ads out there because the CPLs are good at this point for it. Because all of those things are very nebulous and in flux to change. So there are already brands that are doing this. Nike is a very good example. Nike has been spending a lot more of their money and time in the past couple of years focused on positioning themselves with the consumers, with the people, with their struggles and strives, rather than pushing the actual products that they're selling. And it's working for them. The brand has grown from strength to strength, and the revenue is also only increasing. So obviously Nike's a very easy example for this, but if we look at Airbnb as well, Airbnb has cut $220 million of their annual budget away from the performance marketing at this point, because what they have seen is that branding is going to be much more important for them in the future. It's a learning point from the 2020 COVID lockdowns. What they want to do is not be there in the kind of search environment for competing with hotels and all those kind of things for when holidays come up. They want to become the search engine you go to. They want to become the Amazon for holidays at the end of the day. And that's the niche that they found, and that's where they want to position themselves. So there's definitely an opportunity available for all these kind of things for it. We just need to think more creatively as marketers and also bring business along for the journey. Because for a long time as well, marketing, like the product exists in the market, the marketing department needs to sell it, but the product also needs to make sure is developed enough to kind of facilitate the changing need states of the users that we're trying to speak to and market to at any given stage, because it's actual humans that we're trying to get to. Alongside all of this, like I said, the measurements need to change because the coming cookie apocalypse, all those kind of things is going to affect it. So on the right-hand side, we're still going to have our performance marketing metrics and things we need to be looking at. So we're still going to have the daily and weekly kind of things we need to be looking at, like your channel stats, your data-driven attribution user journeys, as well as your offline information uploaded into the online space to give us better optimization points as we're kind of going for it. But alongside that, we need to start looking at media mix modeling to help measure all of our marketing activity, both offline and online together, to see what is having the most impact for us. We need to look at brand measurement much more thoroughly and much more regularly to understand how we are actively moving the needle on what people think about our brand and how our brand is comparing to our competitors as well. This combined with incremental experiments, because you don't know what channel combination is going to have what impact for it. So whether it is channel specific, geo specific, or even testing out specific funnel sections within different platforms, it is very important to have these experiments planned out and structured so you understand exactly what's going to have that incremental effect and bonus point for your brand as you're kind of moving into the marketing spaces. So essentially what it comes down to is we need to move from a marketing need to a platform intent. What is it that the person is doing on that platform, and how can we best position our brand alongside there for success? And all the platforms at this stage has the ability to be full funnel for us. And traditionally, we have search being the bottom funnel, social has, Facebook specifically has jumped up quite a lot for there, and then we have different kind of aspects of it go, cool, YouTube, we're going to be doing YouTube because YouTube's important for us, because it's a very top funnel kind of approach. But all these things need to be taken into mind, that you can utilize full funnel on all of these kind of things by just being smart in your approaches. So whether that is using Snapchat for actual sales, which is very, very good at as well, or doing the AR stores for it, which might not drive too many sales right from the get-go, but establishes the brand as a fun environment to kind of go into. In the Asian markets, we've seen live stream shopping be amazing to kind of put those influencers you're already paying money for to better use, to not just put the brand out there, but to have the discussions, do the education, as well as get the actual sales aspects for that in there as well. So the main thing that I kind of want to leave you with is just three main topics. Lose the binary. Brand versus performance can be a distinction without difference in digital. They should be planned and run together. Consider the job to be done. Your KPIs determine the roles of the platforms and tactics. Don't just default to what we're currently doing now, because we're going to run into a brick wall with that once cookies and all those kind of things start going away. And alongside that, reevaluate your marketing and business objectives and make sure that everything's aligned to the coming change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Marius. It had already started percolating a couple of questions for me in the brands that we have and just looking at consumer behavior. So thank you for all of that. Next up, we have Claudel Naidu and Eleanor Jensen. Now, before I even go into their bios, I would just like to remind our audience that if you have any questions for Marius, please make sure that you add them below and we will get to them in our Q&A section. Now, back to these women. Let me start saying their praises. First up, we have Claudel Naidu, who is MD at Mediacom, and as a change maker, she actually uses deep-rooted African landscape insights to drive performance and deliver on innovation. Having worked across a broad portfolio of clients in categories such as motoring, health, entertainment, telecoms, small businesses, her vision is to continue to inspire and add value to brands who want to grow on the African continent. With the current critical focus being on client experience in her position at Mediacom, she works at enabling, enhancing, and improving how clients interact and engage with the agency to drive return on investment and best practice and performance. And then to Eleanor, who is a director from PwC South Africa. She has a passion for the entertainment and media industry and specializes in providing consulting and assurance services to players in the entertainment and music industry, with a strong hold in preparing various thought leadership publications around the trends, challenges, and opportunities facing this industry. As one of the founding editors of the PwC Southern Africa Entertainment and Media Outlook, as well as the PwC IAB Online Ad Spend Study, we are honored to have you both here with us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sekopatso, for that very warm and lovely welcome. So what I'm going to do for this section is I'm going to kick off, and then I'm going to hand over to Eleanor just to go into some of the top line detail on the Internet Ad Spend Report. And what we really wanted to do in this section is just touch on some of the most impactful trends that we see impacting advertising investment over the next 2 years in South Africa. Now, the first point is just around the demise of the cookie. And I know that Marius went into a lot of detail just now, so I'm not going to go into that level of detail as I planned. But I just wanted to really go back in and highlight the key message that we want to leave you with as an industry. And that's really about, become more strategic about how you target audiences, leverage traditional media wherever you can, use more diverse advertising platforms, and invest in customer data platforms and technologies that will really just allow us to integrate first party, second party, third party data to be integrated into other data sets as an example, just to get that competitive edge going forward. So as we really go through the stages of uncertainty with the demise of the cookie, we honestly don't know as yet what the real impact is going to be, as Marius alluded to upfront. But it is important to stay focused. We need to acknowledge that the cookie might be dead, but personalized digital marketing is alive and well. The second point that we wanted to touch on is this aspect of privacy conscious consumers that, we know has existed for quite some time, not only in our industry, but around the world as well. Trust has always been the big issue for customers in South Africa, irrespective of the sector. We recently saw how millions of WhatsApp subscribers signed up for Telegram and Signal because of WhatsApp's new terms and conditions, and customers' perception that if they signed up, they would be giving access to their personal data to multiple platforms and services, not just WhatsApp, which they obviously refuse to do. The watch out for our industry in this space is to really just ensure that we understand the shift in consumer attitudes towards privacy and how to really tailor messaging and advertising to meet those needs. Again, Marius talked a lot about that upfront as well. The POPI Act, so the Protection of Personal Information Act, forces us to adhere to the guidelines. But as an industry, we shouldn't be doing this just for the sake of compliance. We really need to do this to build trust with customers. And I think if we take that approach, we'll definitely be in the right trajectory. So a recent Infogroup study revealed that 80% of people are more concerned about privacy than ever before. That is huge. Couple this with the demise of the cookie, the journey for digital advertisers and brands becomes even more complex. So with these restrictions on how we use customer data comes big opportunities for digital brands and advertisers to really just build that trust with the customer. A good example of how this could be done is by employing a data privacy first approach, as we like to call it from an agency point of view, and specifically in digital marketing. If people dislike the way their information is shared, their purchase and brand interest drops completely. We've seen this before. So, for example, Amazon features shopping ads throughout their site, making recommendations based on user data as that customer is within the journey online, without upsetting the customer. Now, when Target, also in the USA, followed a similar practice, they failed dismally. The retailer actually sent coupons for maternity products to women they inferred were pregnant. And this included a teenager who had a very, very upset dad. The father found out, and through the process, that she was actually pregnant. This really infuriated not just that individual teenager, but all Target customers. A local newspaper had picked it up, and it just got so messy. So it's really about personalization with a customer-first approach to build trust. The last point that I really want to touch on quickly. Now, I'm certain that most of you would have heard this buzzword being thrown around the industry for quite some time now. And this is really just the rise of e-commerce, and we call it potentially headless commerce, right? Headless commerce architecture is about decoupling the front end of the presentation layer of a website from the back end of the actual e-commerce functionality. Developers can use the front end of the website to really just deliver high quality content experiences. So this basically means by the decoupling process, there's no restrictions and there isn't really a template to control that user experience. and then plug in an e-commerce solution in the back end to really just manage that e-commerce functionality. This type of functionality has step changed how brands and advertisers are currently using commerce to really just engage customers. It also allows brands to create experience-led strategies. And we know how important this has become in the world of brand and product advertising. United Airlines, actually just before COVID, they did headless commerce really, really well, where they created that front-end user journey and experience decoupled from the back end. And they were able to take their sales up incrementally more than 50% year on year. And as I said, just before COVID. So we've seen some really great examples of how this is happening around the world. I think from a South African point of view, we're still yet to see our market really evolve in this headless commerce space. But it's really something for us to watch out and look out for as an industry, because we've seen the rise of e-commerce locally as well. So without further ado, just really wanted to touch on some of those key insights. I'm going to hand over to Eleanor, and we're going to go through she's going to go through some top line insights from the ad spend report. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thanks so much, Claudel. I really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing some of the insights. So I'm not going to do a further introduction. I'm involved in assisting the IAB with preparing IAB PwC online advertising study. And as we mentioned, we also, as PwC, issue a global entertainment and media outlook, which covers various industries: television, internet advertising, out-of-home advertising, radio, and also some of our print mediums. And we do a local version, a Southern African one. The last one we did was in 2019, and that we didn't do one last year due to COVID and the uncertainty in some of the forecasting as a result of that. So just to give you a little bit of a background on our study. So the survey is based on a census of South African brands and agencies. It includes mobile, tablet, and online advertising spend. And in the current year, we have collected data for 2020. You can also access the previous IAB online advertising revenue report, which collected data for 2017 to 2019. All revenues that we report in the study are on a net basis, and they're based on the survey results unless it's clearly stated. So the only exception is paid search revenues. So we know that there's a very big portion of paid search revenues that are not captured through our submissions, and therefore we use the data from the PwC Entertainment and Media Outlook to get to our total internet advertising figure. All figures are on a net basis, and it's very important that it's highlighted that this is based on survey responses, and that we don't apply any forecasting or we don't apply any methodology to try and capture the full market. We really just report what has been reported by the survey respondents. We also don't provide, as PwC, any assurance. We collect the data and we assist the IAB in formulating it for the report. So what is the picture that we see for the current year? So we saw a significant growth of around 18% in the total advertising revenue, and this is despite the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we saw is that overall, the South African advertising industry actually contracted, and this makes this achievement, I suppose, even bigger for the online advertising industry. So it means that the online advertising industry has gained quite significant market share in the current year. And that's consistent with some of the other trends that we've seen. So we know that consumers spend a lot more time online, and it seems that the advertising dollars followed that. So if we take a little bit more of a deep dive into those figures, what you see here is the spend excluding paid search and then paid search itself. So really based on the survey participants, if we have a look of, this is excluding search, an increase between 2019 and 2020 of 1.4 or 1.5 billion to 2.1 billion. It is important to note that there are more participants in the current survey than in the prior year. but also we have seen organic growth in the majority of the survey respondents. So that increase is a combination of a larger population that we've been able to survey, but also an increase due to organic growth. This is what I alluded to. So if we have a look at the internet advertising revenue as a percentage of the total market, the total advertising market, we can see that internet advertising has really cannibalized a portion of the market, or some of the revenues in the current year. So in 2020, the internet advertising market comprises 21% of the total advertising market, which is more in line with what we see globally. I think it's also important to note that the basis of calculating the total advertising industry is done based on the information included in the PwC Entertainment and Media Outlook. So just one or two trends that I want to discuss. If we look at social media spend by platform, we don't see a very significant shift, a small decline in the use of Twitter, and then that offset by an increase in the use of other social media platforms, but the majority of social media spend is on Facebook and Instagram. And then just to take a step back, we also work with the IAB in other territories, so in the UK and in the US, and the growth reported for 2020 in those industries. For the US, that was 2.2% year-on-year growth, and in the UK, that was 5%. So that, as you can see, it's an overall positive trend worldwide in spite of the pandemic. And obviously those two territories, they have more maturity in terms of their survey respondents, so there's less volatility in the number of participants year on year. So we will be issuing the full report by the end of May. So this is just a little bit of the highlights that we've included. The report will include some of the topics that Claudel spoke about, as well as a little bit more information on some of the online advertising trends that we've seen through the survey. If you do have any questions, Tsecho has told you, but if I can just remind you, you can just add them in the Q&A, and then you're most welcome. We will definitely address them at the end of in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Thank you so much. Back to you, Tsecho.
Thank you for that. And you stole my link. Now what must I do? Now I have to play elevator music or tap dance. No, I joke. Thank you so much for that, Eleanor and Claudel. And as a reminder, obviously, do put your questions in the Q&A section as we move on to our next speaker, who is Gregory Mason from Native South Africa. Greg has over 12 years of digital advertising experience with a specific focus on commercializing online publications through advertising. During his career, he has worked closely with large international publishers like MSN, BBC, CBS Interactive, Sky News, and Daily Mail to drive their revenue in South Africa. In addition to these international sites, he has also worked closely with leading domestic publishers like Media24, Arena Holding, and Hive Digital, to name a few. Greg is currently the regional manager for Narrative South Africa operations and has a deep understanding of website analytics and audience data and how this underpins the value proposition for publishers monetizing their sites through advertising. Gregory, thank you for joining us.
Tsecho, thank you so much. And it's fantastic to be presenting here today. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so as you introduced, Tsecho, I'm going to be chatting you guys through the IAB South Africa and Narrative Digital Landscape Survey. So what was the purpose of the survey? It was to understand who is browsing online in South Africa by analyzing the IAB demographic survey data collected across IAB member and Narrative measured websites. So Narrative, we're the official measurement partner for the IAB South Africa. And in South Africa, we currently measure about 180 websites. We measure those sites through an on-page JavaScript tag that gets inserted onto those sites. And that allows us to collect web analytic data as well as demographic data from a pop-up survey. That pop-up survey runs continuously across all those 180 sites that we measure. I hope a large part of you attending the event today have filled out our survey. And if you haven't, I've got a screenshot so you can see what it looks like. So please click on it and fill it out next time you see it. So that survey runs across the sites all the time, and it typically profiles 1 in 5 people who visit a website. And this is how it would look. So this is just an example of the pop-up survey in the bottom right-hand corner of News 24. A user would be able to start that survey, and this is an example of how it looks once it's started, and this is it running on Times Live. So this survey is running the whole time and giving narrative and all our customers a wealth of demographic data. So we use this data to be able to collate this digital landscapes report. And an overview of the data analyzed was, we looked at data from the 1st of October to the 31st of December, 2020. We had a total of 31,456 respondents who actually filled out the survey over that period and completed the survey. And with some modeling, we managed to model that out to an estimated figure of 30.2 million South Africans. So that's actual individuals who are online and browsing the internet. So a phenomenal number and fantastic penetration of the South African population. So on that note, on the great penetration, 2020 really was the year of online growth. And here again, very much in line with the digital ad spend report, showing that there was amazing growth in 2020. And obviously that was primarily driven by COVID. So we really saw a massive uptick in the consumption of news content, and I'll be quite proud and also confident to say that South Africans typically used our domestic publishers as their go-to source for COVID news. It was close to home, it was relevant, it was topical, and it was giving us all as a nation the news that we needed. So that really drove tremendous growth across the sites that narrative measures. And some of those notable stats, if we look at 2019 versus 2020, we see a 19% increase in unique browsers year on year. So just maybe as a quick definition, a unique browser is either a specific device. So I've got my cell phone and my laptop. Those are 2 unique browsers because they'll have specific IP addresses. Also, similarly, on my laptop, I might use Google Chrome and Safari as my internet browsers. And those 2 could be counted as 2 separate unique browsers, and they would be counted as 2 separate unique browsers. But despite that, the methodology stays the same year on year, and we have a 19% increase in unique browsers. Similarly, looking at that modeled out number of 30.2 million South Africans online, we saw a 12.5% increase in internet users and a 12% increase in mobile traffic. So I know it's a going joke in the industry to say that this is the year of the mobile, but it just continues to be, and it really is tremendous growth on mobile traffic generated. So now moving on to looking at an overview of the demographics and the overall demographic profile and foundation of those 31,000 odd respondents that we analyzed over the period. We can see I'll give you just run through a quick overview of some of the core demographics. So just some of the things that jumped out to me that were super interesting. So in the top right-hand corner, 76% are decision makers for groceries and consumables in the household. So that's pretty powerful to see that people online are, and particularly the people that narrative are measuring online, are part of the affluent demographic of South Africa. And they would definitely consider themselves the purchase decision makers in their household. And 25% have a household income of over 20,000 per month. Again, reiterating that narrative is looking at a piece of the pie that is definitely affluent, and it's an affluent demographic in South Africa. And that totally makes sense. You need means, you need technology, you need internet connectivity to be able to be online. Then last just interesting note here, 39% are working full time. I was quite surprised, and I am always quite surprised at that stat. Surprised that it's as low as it is. And yeah, I would have thought, understandably with COVID, that wouldn't be a massive upswing in that, but my gut feel always feels like that should be around the 50-60% mark. And then just lastly, 10% are business owners as well, which is also pretty amazing, talking to our entrepreneurial culture in South Africa. Then looking at sort of broad internet usage stats that we pulled out from the respondents. So encouraging to see that 89% have access to internet every day, which is just phenomenal. So out of those 30.2 million, 89% of them are going on every day. That talks to a very highly engaged internet user audience. And then also just quite interesting to note, I would have thought 16% have a smart TV at home. I would have thought that would have been a bit higher, as well as also only 16% have a tablet. So I've got a hunch that the popularity of tablets has somewhat declined over the past few years. And I'm sure if we go back 4 or 5 years, I'm sure that was a lot higher, around the 30% mark. But really, really exciting to see the amount of connectivity that people would have at home. Then looking at activities, so there are quite a few data points on here. Essentially, the core takeaway that I want to give you on this slide is just how engaged people are, that narrative measured online, how engaged they are online and how much they're doing online. It really, digital has just become a total pillar of their lives, and they're conducting so many things like shopping online for groceries and clothing, doing online banking. I mean, 58% of the audience is doing online or mobile banking. 23% listen to podcasts, 33% stream music. So just phenomenal usage of online and all its different channels. So yeah, with that, I would love to hear from the audience, just as a show. Which online activity has increased the most for you post-COVID-19? And just be so great to gauge how online has changed for you in such a fast-changing space. So I'll just give you guys some time to pick your answer there. Amazing. So yeah, 37% shop for groceries. So very in line with our survey data. 18% shop for clothes, and 18% study and learn. So that's quite interesting, because that's quite a bit less than 56% that answered that they study and use the internet for studying and learning. But thank you so much. That's super interesting to see. So when we looked at the overall survey data, we picked out 3 core insights that I want to share with you today. And I think this will give you some really good nuggets of information and see the trends and see where digital is moving. So moving on to insight number 1, and I do hope that this has moved on to finding 1, and it says internet users are becoming younger and wealthier. I did have some trouble with my screen sharing moving along on the slides after the poll. But finding 1 is essentially internet users are becoming younger and wealthier. And that really is quite amazing, particularly considering the economic hardships that the world and South Africa experienced last year. So, but the specific stats that actually underpin that statement are, we had a 7% growth in people online below the age of 35. So that jumped from 61% to 65% year on year. Then the second stat that underpins the statement is that 47% increase in people earning over 20,000 Rand per month. And that's a huge jump, jump from 17% to 25%. And again, for me, this was a stat that sort of jumped out to me and made me scratch my head a little bit and think this is a bit counterintuitive, considering the economic hardship that we all went through last year. And my feeling is that when we looked at the total population, the population increase of people coming online, a lot more people got internet connectivity last year. And I think that was a more affluent demographic that got internet connectivity. So naturally, it's going to raise that bell curve and skew our responses to having quite a big growth to people earning over 20,000 Rand per month. But just a very interesting insight to come out in an interesting year-on-year comparison. Then very much in line with that same stats, 48% increase in super groups 4 and 5, and jumping from 33% to 49% year-on-year. Great, so on to finding number 2. Internet connectivity is more readily accessible. And this is in line with what I just mentioned. And the stats that underpin this statement are, there was an overall 4% increase in people who access the internet every day. And I think that is just a phenomenal stat. It just talks to the maturity of our market, and it talks to the connectivity that people are now establishing in their lives and all their different digital touch points. And for that to jump from 85 to 88% year on year, I think is really fantastic. And it's no wonder, because during COVID, digital had to become everyday part of our lives. And yeah, that jumped up to 88%. The second stat that proves that statement is that there was a 21% increase in people who have access to internet at their home. And this is internet access other than just their mobile phone. So it's an ADSL or a specific mobile dongle, allowing them to connect to fast-paced internet. And this is also a tremendous growth. And this is pretty obvious when you think about it, with so many of us having to work from home. So much of us rely on internet connectivity to work from home. And people who didn't have internet had to go and rush and get internet and get that set up at home. So that jumps from 48 to 58%. And the super exciting thing about this point is that that's infrastructure established. That's infrastructural gains. And that's something that is just going to, it's a catalyst for our industry, and it's just going to speed it up. So that infrastructure is now in place, and we can just enjoy the gains of that year after year after year. Then lastly, our last finding was more day-to-day activities and entertainment are being carried out online. So I've divided this up into looking at day-to-day activities, and some of the day-to-day activities that jumped out to me that I thought was pretty interesting was 35% of people shop online, and that translated to a 35% increase year on year. 58% of people do online banking, and that was a 14% increase year on year. And 56% of people study online, and that was a 6% increase year on year. And now just remember, with the studying online, we filter out anyone who's under the age of 15 to complete our survey. And we have very few respondents who are between the age of 15 and 18 who are actually completing our survey. So typically that studying online is looking at some form of further education. It's either short courses like through Udemy or Get Smarter, or it's through an online university. So that's pretty impressive that 56% of people who answered the survey are studying online. And just talks to how quickly that industry has moved and how established distance learning has become. And one thing that I would note here is I would really love to see shopping online to jump up significantly. I still think 35% of people is very low. And I think we are going to see pretty big gains of that when we look at the same survey data for next year. I think apps like 6060, Woolworths is talking about their own shopping app. I think it may have even launched. I think it's called Woolworths Dash. You look at Pick n Pay Bottles app, and e-commerce is just establishing fantastically in our industry. So I'm really confident that when we look at shopping online, I think we're going to see tremendous growth in that next year. And I really hope I'm right, because that would be a fantastic growth point. Great. Then looking at day-to-day entertainment online. So it's definitely a buzzword or a hot topic at the moment, online gaming. Still relatively small percentage of the audience, but look at that phenomenal increase, 88% increase, resulting in 15% of the respondents saying that they do online gaming. And that also ties in fantastically with, if you remember, the 16% of respondents have a smart TV. So when you look at technology like that, and again, infrastructural gains, we can see how it starts influencing people's behavior online and how it starts maturing our industry, which is really exciting. But phenomenal growth, 88% increase year on year for online gaming. Streaming of TV, 38% increase. I was actually really surprised at that. I would have thought that that would have been a lot higher. You just need to look at, like, every small little dorpy in South Africa has their own Facebook page for what to watch on Netflix. That's phenomenal. So I would have thought streaming TV would have been a lot higher. Perhaps we need to just go and look at that question and how it was asked. Maybe there was some ambiguity in the question. And there are actually also quite a lot of options in the multiple choice answers. So maybe there is a little bit of inaccuracy in that data. I hate to say it, but we need to be realistic. And when you see a 38% or 36% of people streaming TV, it makes me think that that is a bit low, but still phenomenal increase, sitting at 38% year on year. And then 28% increase in people listening to podcasts. So 23% of people now listen to podcasts online. And yeah, I think that just talks to how phenomenally people have adopted online, and it's just becoming part of their everyday lives. So in conclusion, I think 2020 was a huge growth year for digital in South Africa. I think we've made gains of multiple years worth of development and adoption in our digital industry, both infrastructural and also behavioral changes. I think that stands our industry in fantastic stead. I think that's a really positive thing for us. And not only did we see amazing growth in numbers, but in user behavior. You just need to look at some of the stats that I've pulled up today. It's really exciting to see how people are engaging with online. And lockdowns and social distancing meant that digital had to become a part of our everyday lives. And I think this has just entrenched itself in our lives, and we believe these changes are here to stay. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Greg. I think a big reason maybe why people didn't look at streaming was probably because there were so many Instagram lives like this time last year that we were all channel surfing that and not so much.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for that.
Thanks,
one. Just a reminder to everyone that this is our second year of the reports. So it will be available on the 31st of May on the IAB SA member portal, including the IAB SA PwC online ad spend reports. Right, last up on today's lineup, we have Mark Pryor, who is Head of Digital and Video on Demand Ad Delivery and Strategy from DSTV Media Sales. But before we get into the life and times of Mark, before I get into his life story, I want to ask everyone, how do you watch TV? So there'll be a poll that will come up on your screen. I was just curious as to how do you watch it? Where do you engage with television? Is it from your phone? Do you watch it on your smart TV, Apple TV? Let us know. We'll give you a couple of minutes for that one. I wonder, because I know people have downloaded every single streaming app on their cell phones. And probably the reason why tablets have also gone down in sales. Cell phones are getting as big as tablets, so we understand the correlation. Right, so 61% is everyone watching on their smart TV. Coming in close is their mobile device, which was estimated, and traditional TV. Cool. Well, I think this has a lot for for Mark to actually unpack. Let me get into his bio. So with experience in both sports, public relations, and at Supersport digital integration, Mark has migrated all DSTV platforms across to independent ad servers and built a strong team of campaign managers that service clients across both digital and video offering. With innovation as a key focus for him, he continues to push the boundaries within DSTV media sales and digital environments. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Dejo.
Lovely
Thanks
to
so much
see
for
you
the
with your background. I feel like I need to upgrade mine.
No, this background is actually the normal background, and I think it just shows how interesting life is in these COVID times, where your home office turns into a playroom and an art display, depending on the time of day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dejo. So what a privilege it is for me to present to all of you in this dynamic industry that we work in, where everything changes and new journeys and new things happening every day. 1 minute we're talking about display banners, the next minute we're talking about server-side ad insertion. Who knows what we'll be discussing this time next year. Today I'm going to cover a few things about being smart. Our televisions are smart, our audiences are smart, and the technology that was always smart is getting smarter, and now we need to also ensure that we are buying smart. So I'm sure I don't need to explain too much to everyone in this virtual room of what a smart TV is, like I do to my parents almost every month. But I thought it would be good just to define what a smart TV is, and I'm really excited to see that those numbers are so high, sitting at 60% of how people are consuming TV is really exciting for us. But a smart TV is also known as a connected TV. It is traditionally television set with integrated internet and interactive Web 2.0 features, which allows users to stream music and video, browse internet, and view photos. Smart TVs are technologically conversion of computers and televisions and digital media players. So with that in mind, I think it's also important to keep in mind is that these days it's becoming increasingly easier for users to have access to a smart TV. We have devices that can take an old TV and make it smart, as well as buying new TVs with everything built in. You know, we have users in the Apple environment who are buying Apple TVs. The Android TV works really well, and you don't have to go and buy the latest television to have access to live streaming apps and content. And also, people are looking to cut the cord. You know, if it's from situations where you want to make your living space look clean with no cables lying around, or whether it's the fact that you want to be able to migrate your TV viewing consumption from place to place. You know, you could be watching it on the way home from work one day, and then you want to go and sit in front of your TV at home. If that content can move from
Sorry
Yes.
to disturb you. Your slides aren't changing. Do you mind just unsharing and resharing again?
Sure, no problem.
The joys of sharing screen.
No problem. Let me try again.
Okay.
Is it sharing?
Give it a moment. It says you started sharing. Ooh, no, hold on. Let's just see.
Let me try. Apologies for that. I will try something else.
Mark, you should definitely get hold of Greg and have a conversation with him, because he seemed to have started the trend early on this morning and has passed it on to you. So I hope you guys aren't sharing information. It is just a Zoom and PowerPoint sort of integration. They often have a couple of delays. So if you wouldn't mind just restarting your PowerPoint on your side, Zoom will eventually just catch up with you and start again. So if you could stop your screen share, close your presentation and reload it. Thank you.
No problem.
So Kofato, is this where we practice the good old dance and jokes that you've lined up for us?
Yay, now I have to bring out my Beyonce voice. I didn't think the suit would, push me to such lengths. And in case anyone is wondering, the background voice that is an angel of God, that is our technical team who jumps in when we have such difficulties. So, oh, something is happening, Mark.
Anything?
No.
Still
Would
nothing.
you like me to share it from my end?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, let's try that. Okay. Does everyone see it?
Yeah, I can see it on my side, so we can scroll on down.
Okay. Must I continue?
Yep, there. One more.
One more.
So yeah, I was talking about, I need to find my notes now, about cutting the cord. So, obviously people are cutting the cords to make sure their TV rooms look nice, and it makes life easier from a migration of content and also content discovery. So we can go to the next one. So as the technology spreads, the broadcasters have had to adapt the traditional products to include a live streaming solution. As I'm sure you guys have seen in America, it seems like every single broadcaster has now released an app that will be their online solution. And so the streaming wars began. And initially it was Netflix who went from a DVD rental service to a streaming service that swept the world, offering users access to thousands of hours of content, both old and new. But as time has gone on, more and more apps have popped up. And as this graph shows, the share of the subscription revenue for Netflix has gone from 44% down to a predicted 30.8% predicted this year. And for me, the key differentiator here comes down to rights. Who has what content, who has the rights to that content, and where they can show that content. And big content owners have, as you can see, have started pulling their digital rights off of third-party platforms and including it in their own streaming apps. Next one for me, Sejo. So now audiences have a choice, and they get to choose what kind of content they watch, when they watch this content. They can subscribe, they can unsubscribe, they have access to thousands of hours, as I mentioned. And now it is a new way for us to advertise to our audiences. These opportunities unfortunately do come at a price. Next one. Our audience have gotten smarter and smarter, and appointment viewing is not what it used to be, and our viewers are evolving. So Upland Softland says there are 5 types of audiences, namely the casual viewer. So these are people that enjoy series style content with contained arcs and content that requires the least amount of commitment. Someone sit down with the family, watch a piece of content. There's no real storyline that they have to follow. We also get the obsessed super fan, and I'm sure all of us have been this person once in our life. These are people who make sure that as soon as that piece of content is available, they are watching it. They dive headfirst in. I think a show like Game of Thrones comes to mind here, where people were waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to watch that content. We also have a multi-show maverick, and these people watch a lot of TV. They keep up with multiple shows. They enjoy content and are obsessed with aren't obsessed with a specific type of show. I definitely was one of these people until children came into my life. We also get the all-night binges, and I think probably all of us have been this person at least once in our lives. And this person probably lacks a little bit of self-control and find themselves watching a show that they love and then watching it episode after episode and consuming a whole evening. And they prefer to do this as opposed to watching episodes at a certain time. An interesting one for me is this Rotten Tomatoes critic, almost like a TV snob. They only want to watch content that is rated highly, and they rely on these ratings and proof of the fact that the content is good before they even commit to watching it. Next slide. But there is now the 6th type of audience, and that is the smart audience. Next. To start off with, on the softer side, the value of TV has increased over the years. The television has reaffirmed itself, its rightful place in the home. It has comforted us during the lockdown period, enabled us to escape into various genres TV has provided education for the children that are sitting at home, and babysitting for parents. Remember that in that first month of lockdown where both parents potentially working at home with no one to look after the kids, and the TV was very much part of day-to-day life. And it's definitely been a way to help juggle the challenges of being stuck at home. And so TV has gained a renewed importance around social sharing. That's fine. Our smart audience have had an accelerated adoption of data. Suddenly, users needed to have access to data from home to do anything. People were now more connected and could now use data to satisfy their TV viewing needs as well. And as Greg's slide said, there's been that increase in TV viewing, and also I think that number of 36% is probably a bit low, definitely from what the numbers that we've seen. Also, quite amazingly, Vodacom said that they saw 3.4 million user growth last year, from June to September in 2020, with data usage soaring to up to 85%. MTN said that subscribers are on prepaid are consuming 2 gigabytes of data on average, and post-paid data subscribers using nearly 10 gigabytes a month. And I think something that is really exciting and something that I'm passionate about is that Digital Technologies Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams has agreed to ensure that 80% of South African population has access to internet by 2024. Now, while that is amazing for access to knowledge and information as well as education, imagine what this means for TV consumption for these users over the next few years. Next slide. Viewers have accelerated the adoption of viewing platforms, and in South Africa, the 3 streaming services holding an 82% of the market currently in Q4. The viewer chooses what they watch and when they watch it and whatever suits them. I'm pretty sure we can expect to see more apps and services popping up in South Africa over the next couple of years. Next. What's quite interesting is with all the providers is the amount of content that we have available to us. Quite a nice number. Last year, MultiChoice Group created 3,850 hours of local content. And physically, I don't think it's possible to watch that kind of TV. And that is literally just one provider. Next. With the growth in cross-device viewership and additional functionality, globally, we are seeing brands embrace the more real-time data-driven TV to their approach. A TV is anything from what is mounted to a wall in your TV room or something that is in the palm of your hand. And as the continuation of smart mobile devices grows, accessibility and affordability becomes even more achievable with the expansion of potentially reaching more people and, more excitingly, be more measurable. It is fast becoming a reality for us. Okay, next. I believe for many years, publishers were more, or broadcasters were more concerned about making sure that their content, be it satellite or be it, however they were putting it out there, they were trying to focus on how to make that available through their apps and through technology. And so the multi-million-dollar question is now coming up is how do we monetize these OTT platforms, these apps that are living on our smart TVs and our devices at home. Advertisers now have access to these audiences. It is therefore really important to ensure that there is smart technology to reach the smart audiences in the best way possible. Now that the people are consuming TV on their smart devices, we are now able to learn a lot more about them. For example, what devices are they using? The question in the poll earlier was, what do you use to consume TV? Everyone here seems to be using smart TVs, which is also really exciting. But something that became quite obvious to us when we started really looking at the DSTV offering is that people are quite comfortable sitting and watching content on their laptops, if it's in their bedrooms or in their lounge. Some people probably don't even have a traditional TV. Also, what type of content people watch and how they watch it. Are people connected to Wi-Fi? Are they in big cities, or are they sitting in little dorps, as mentioned before? What kind of content is popular on digital platforms? We think that soapies consume people's lives at home. Is this true for the digital platforms? Does the user fall into a specific first-party segment? And what does that tell us about them? We have Now that TV is able to overlay data, we can tell gender, age, anything that can link to the first party data, which is really exciting. And also with that comes the understanding of whether this user has been exposed to a specific advertising campaign on other platforms. We are able to see, for example, if someone saw an ad on one of our platforms and then they're looking at the SuperSport website, we're able to track those, and it's really quite an interesting user journey. And what we can also determine about our user base is based on behavior within the TV viewing environment. So I'm not at that slide just yet, Seho. For example, and I think this is quite an interesting one, and as you can see from the artwork behind me, I have children, but you could probably tell that by looking at my viewing habits. If it's not Bluey on Disney Channel or Paw Patrol, I'm also watching content like The Prodigal Son and Legacy. Now, I really shouldn't be surprised to see adverts from Puppuccinos popping up in any of my digital environments for my weekend dining. Okay, next. It is with this in mind that buying needs to be smart. So we need to know that viewers are using connected TVs and other OTT devices to watch linear and video on demand. We can now use the data to inform which inventory to buy and what creative to use. There's a wealth of data that can be used to make TV addressable. It should influence the creative, it should influence the strategy, and it should definitely increase the performance. It is so exciting to working in technology and operations, seeing the changes made in tech and seeing how they play out is really rewarding. And now we're able to insert ads digitally in video on demand platforms, using client-side ad insertion, pre-rolls, mid-rolls, post-rolls. Next slide. The same technology also enables us to start exploring pause screen advertising. And currently we do that on our set-top box environment at DSTV, but now we'll be able to do this digitally. Next slide. And what's more exciting for the live streaming viewers, like the Liverpool fans who saw their goalkeeper score a goal in the last minute of the game against West Brom on the weekend, is that we're able to see unique advertising dependent on the data that we make available, making use of server-side ad insertion. This allows for fully addressable TV, no wastage, relevant creative, and clear call to actions. But if only it were that easy. The TV world now needs to answer questions that were never asked before. For example, viewability. Traditionally, TV easily answered the question, did my ad play out? Ads play out as part of a stream across a broadcasting region. It was not a concern, and a recording would very easily show the success of an implementation. Now, with TV becoming digital, it is critical to verify that ads are viewed, and ad fraud is kept to a minimum. I thought it was quite interesting that Double Verify confirmed that ad fraud had tripled in the last year, and they had found over 500,000 fake connected TVs. Compliance and POPIA for TV was never an issue either. TV hasn't had to worry about it. Firstly, POPIA wasn't around, but ads would simply play out where they were scheduled to go out. Now that we're able to use data to determine where ads play out, publishers where it's played out, and publishers need to actively be aware that their audiences are sharing this data with us, and whether be it passively or active. And lastly, for those number crunchers in the room, whilst TV reporting is good, there's a new level to this reporting, the dimensions and metrics that are now available from a digital or connected TV environment, and how we interpret and optimize campaigns to better perform in these environments is really important. Next slide. Now that there are smart audiences, smart technology, smart buying can now happen across all TV platforms. Next. Content is able to be bought in the right way. This is a great slide that a colleague of mine has put together. And it really shows how content is consumed in the DSTV environment. This is Love Island, South Africa. And in the stack, you can see there's 10 ways in which content can be consumed. And with the way that we are starting to enable advertising across all of these platforms, we're now able to track those audiences across those same platforms and give you an overall report and insights into how it performed, where before people would just think it would go out on our linear platforms. Next one. For client-side ad insertion, we can buy connected TV environments programmatically, which is really exciting. And now we not only will we able to have addressable TV, but we're able to have programmatic buying TV. And so this is very much a reality in our world now. And as mentioned, the use of data will determine how buyers buy TV, and becomes a new, this solution, this programmatic solution is also a really exciting place to be. In closing, broadcasters need to make sure that they make the correct choices with regards to technology they are implementing. They need to protect the user and enable the buyer. Smart insights to be given using audience data and habits and behaviors. Smart decisions made based on platforms and audiences, let the creative relevance lead. And lastly, making use of previously mentioned points, smart TV buying can happen. And that's me. Thanks, Jeho.
Cool. Hold on, I'm navigating the world of sharing screen as a host. So thank you so much for that, Mark. I will now invite all of our speakers to please come back on screen, and we will begin our Q&A section. Let me just pull up the questions. Okay, great. I'll start from the top. Marius, this is a question from Michelle Hogarth, and she says, how does Jellyfish approach media mix modeling? Is this something you work with partners on, i.e. Nielsen and Kantar, or do you do this in-house?
So it's a very, very good question. And it very much depends on your brand itself that you're kind of sitting with. So we have done media mix modeling completely exclusively out of Jellyfish. But for some brands, for other brands, we've worked with partners for this as well. The main thing to kind of keep in mind is it depends on where you are in your digital maturity. If you ever kind of approached it before. If you haven't, I would definitely recommend working with a partner and all those kind of things, because it just makes the business as a whole feel a bit more like, we're not marking our own homework kind of situation for it. So I would definitely recommend, if your business hasn't touched it before, work with a partner, and we can kind of all work together on those kind of things. If you have run it in the past and all those kind of things, it is something Jellyfish can help out with. Tejo, you're muted.
Oh, wow. I can never get used to this world. Okay, and the next one is from Mangoba Ringane, and I have an assumption that this one is referring to the survey that Greg has spoken to, and he asked, is the survey only available for big brands? How do startups get access to the survey?
Yeah, so it's not actually available to big brands or any brands. It's an internet user survey, and it's run across the 180 websites that we measure. And it's a continual profiling of internet users on those websites. So it's not a brand focused survey. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think it does. Thank you. And the next one is for Mark from Alan Smith. At which point do you predict that brands will be completely integrated with content and not interrupting it or sitting within commercial brands, i.e. non-interruptive?
Sure. I mean, that's a difficult one to answer. We focus on traditional forms of advertising with breaks between shows, and now in the digital world, pre-rolls and mid-rolls. I think at the end of the day, we see integration of advertising into gaming environments. It's happening quite a lot, and I think we're really doing some of it on TV with Whisper Media. You're able to have your brands live in content, and I think pretty soon you'll see potentially programmatic Whisper Media buying, where you can have, dependence on your location, you'll have your brand inserted as a billboard in the background of a shot, dependence on the user. So I think we may be a few years away from that, while we're still trying to figure out the technicalities of ensuring that live stream ads are changed from a device to device and user to user. I think this is definitely something that's on most broadcasters' roadmaps, and I think it's something to look forward to.
Thank you. While I still have you, actually, Mark, there was another question from Anonymous where they asked, please advise how we can plan against DSTV's viewers when the industry only has TAMS. We are so keen to pull the viewers into our plan, but we don't have access to DSTV's data.
I really wish I had Calvin Story in on this question. You know, obviously it's a very tricky one. We're talking about TV viewing reports compared to digital, but I think unfortunately I don't think I'm quite in line to answer this question. I think please drop me a text and I'll put you in touch with the person who can answer that with a much clearer line of sight than I will, but yeah.
No problem. Thank you. Next up is for Claudel. It is super to see the growth in digital media over the course of 2020. Is that a result you were expecting? And were there any other data points that stood out for you in the report?
It's a really good question. And I think it's been a question on everybody's mind, you know, leading up to the findings of the report. I think we were expecting it. You know, just looking back at 2020, we saw the transformation and the quick step change from a digital media and online consumption point of view. So I think we're seeing obviously very similar patterns from an investment point of view, because obviously, you know, investment needs to correlate to audience consumption, right? Patterns and behavior. So to answer the question, we were not surprised. We were expecting to see a big incremental increase from a digital or online investment point of view. And that's obviously in line with consumer and audience behavior, and more so during the pandemic.
Thank you. Up next is for Eleanor. Based on the insights and outcome of the IAB SA PwC online ad spend report, are there any major differences in South Africa compared to other countries in the continent, as seen in the PwC Media and Entertainment report?
Thank you, Tseho. Yes, definitely. So we actually we didn't see this significant growth. So the other countries that we look at are Nigeria and Kenya, in a lot of detail. And we didn't see as significant growth in online advertising in those two territories in the past year as we saw in South Africa. And that's really because of internet penetration and the quality of data connections, right? So in both of those two territories, internet access is still much lower than it is in South Africa, and it really also is mobile internet access mainly, which sometimes is too slow to really place ads on, or alternatively also just people being very selective with the data that they are using due to the pricing concerns. So we did see very nominal growth, very, very small, but not to the extent that we saw in South Africa.
Okay, and while I have you, and we have another question from Khomolemo, who says, please explain the slide with the 3 geographical zones and how come SA figures are higher during a pandemic, and does the IAB report also look at Pan-African countries?
So maybe let me first answer the latter part of the question. So no, we don't look at other African countries for the IAB advertising report. It's only based on South Africa. And then the reason why we included the other 2 segments, or the other 2 countries being the US and the UK, is because the IAB do a similar study to those territories. In those territories, I think the South African figures, as I mentioned, the growth is coming from 2 places, right? The one is that we've increased the number of participants. So obviously there are revenues for participants in the current year that didn't participate in the prior year. And then the second point is that we really did see organic growth year on year for the companies that have participated in both years. I think this is also to do with maturity of internet penetration. So in the UK and the US, you would see typically that the internet penetration is significantly higher. You know, whereas South Africa, we still have a lot of people coming online. I think to what Greg also showed, you know, a significant change to the amount of people that are transacting online, that have moved their more traditional behaviors to online, and that's why you would see the higher growth.
Thank you. This question is from Amy Waterson, and this one is for Greg. And please, other panelists, do jump in if you have more to add. So she asks, I'm interested in understanding how WhatsApp for Business has been impacted by the privacy-conscious consumer, especially since Claudel mentioned the drop in WhatsApp users when they announced their privacy policies. How are businesses who operate off of WhatsApp for Business responding?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's way out of my field of expertise. We don't work much with WhatsApp for Business, and I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of stats on that. So I'm going to have to pass to another panelist to jump in there.
I'll pass it over to Claudel.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because we don't have those stats right now. But I think generally speaking, from a privacy point of view, I think there's definitely an impact just in terms of how businesses utilize WhatsApp, right? And adhering to some of those guidelines. So we don't have those stats available. I think we can definitely look into it. We also don't want to speak out of turn, right? Because WhatsApp is its own platform and we want to get the right stats. But as I said, from a data and privacy point of view, the way businesses would engage going forward, and in my perspective, would be a lot to do with being compliant and making sure that they are following those privacy rules. In terms of the actual impact in numbers, I guess we'd have to get those from the platform itself.
Thank you for that one. And to our last question, this one is for Marius. Hold on, I just want to read it properly. You mentioned the move from channel to platform. What would you define as platform? As I noted, you grouped Google, YouTube, and Pinterest and Instagram together in your examples.
So the platforms are actually those individual kind of things. So Instagram is a platform, YouTube's a platform, all those kind of things is separated out. The main thing is just thinking about when we say platform, it's more the holistic platform by itself rather than just as a marketing channel where we can put on a video ad or a single image ad on Facebook as that kind of approach for it. It's more looking holistically, what does everything in the channel allow you to actually utilize to really connect with your audiences from that kind of side there. So YouTube being a good example for that specifically. If we look at YouTube as a platform, it's obviously, it has a search functionality, it has the your own kind of discovery kind of page for it and whatnot. But to Mark's point, depending on where you are, what device you're utilizing while watching, your actual experiences and what you expect to see from a creative and from advertising is going to be different. If you are on your phone and you are actively searching for DIY kind of things, a 30-second ad is not what you want to see. You're not going to engage with it. It's not going to be hitting the point home. If you are sitting watching a smart TV, you can definitely push those things through with it. So it's about just looking at the platform holistically and the context and information we can get out of the users for that to really decide what it is we want to drive with it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to all our panelists and speakers. That was heavily insightful. I can see even just from the questions that are coming in, but unfortunately we have to close. So thank you so much to the audience for your engagement, for your ears and your eyes as you look to all the opportunities shared by our speakers today. Thank you to Jellyfish for sponsoring this episode and our partners, DSTV Media Sales, Narrative, Gumtree, Everlytic, and Biz Community for making today's episode possible. Join us next on our episode for Pixel for Purpose Pix It for Purpose, IAB Good Works on the 23rd of June 2021, where we give you insights in 60 minutes for you wherever you may be. May you all have a great week. Thank you so much. Goodbye.